Hello, beautiful ladies. This is Katie, and today I have something a little special for you. I want to tell you a little story. So, there was a time in my life where I couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong when it came to men. So, this was like a good probably 18 months period where I felt like I had tried everything to get a relationship, to find a man to get into a relationship, and it seemed like nothing was working. So I had tried, going out or the networking events, going on dates on Tinder, on the dating apps, seeing if I can meet a man that way. I had tried just staying at home, focusing on myself, right? Ignoring men, just minding my own business. I had tried not wanting a relationship, not caring about wanting a relationship. So when I would go out and if I met a guy and conversations flowed, I just go with the flow, right? I wasn't intentional about being in a relationship. I had also tried being intentional, saying I did want a relationship, telling the universe I wanted a relationship, telling everybody I wanted a relationship, and showing up on my dates that way, telling men that I'm pursuing something serious, not anything casual. So I feel like I had tried literally everything. I've also tried just leaning back, not chasing men, and in fact, I'm very good at doing that for the most part. I'm very good at leaning back and not chasing. Done all of that, and yet I was still single for that good, I think it was actually really, a year and a half, maybe even 2 years, where I was trying all these things and I still couldn't get into a relationship. And I was just baffled. I was like, what is happening? I've tried everything. All the things that other people have said they've done to get into a relationship, I feel like I had done that. Didn't work. So I was just could not figure it out. I thought maybe there is something wrong with me. What is happening? Right? So one time I went to a networking event or an event, and I met this guy there. And it was like sparks flew, right? I was attracted to him. He was so attractive. He was tall, right? We had great conversations. We had things in common. We had the similar values. And he was attracted to me too. And we went on this date. It was great. Connected really well. And he was starting to act like a boyfriend, doing boyfriendy things, relationship-y stuff and saying relationship-y stuff, right? He wasn't acting like he just wanted to get laid. He just wanted sex. So it felt like we were heading in the right direction. Hey, this is a guy that maybe he's the one. Seemed like everything's just coming together. Maybe I finally met the guy, right? And then a couple of weeks passed, and then it started to happen. The same thing. He started to pull away. I could feel it. He started to pull away. And I found myself waiting for him to text me. And there was this one period of about 10 days where I didn't hear a peep from him. Ladies, I was a mess. Literally, I just met this guy, went on one date with him, and because he wasn't messaging me he was quiet for 10 days, I was a wreck. I couldn't sleep. I probably wasn't eating. I had work planned and things planned, but I was so distracted. I couldn't pay attention to what I was originally going to do in my work. I was just so distraught. I was like, what is happening? It's happening again. And it just felt so familiar. I felt like I had been here before. It just happened with another guy. Okay, in fact, the last guy I dated, it was the same thing. Me waiting around for him to text me, wondering why he still hadn't texted me, checking my phone a million times a day, checking had he read my message, and if he had read my message, why hasn't he yet responded to it? And thinking, well, yes, I know he's busy. He's probably working on his business. He's doing this, doing that. He did say this, so maybe he's doing that. you know, like trying to justify what it could be, because I just couldn't get my head around how it was we had such a strong connection. I liked him so much, he liked me so much, that he couldn't possibly be interested. Like, because every time we talked, he was interested, right? So this was where I finally had enough. Something went off in my mind. I think I just hit that point of frustration. I just jumped on my computer, I pulled out my Word document, and I wrote at the top of the page why I pick the men I pick. Because I thought, okay, something was wrong, okay? I had to figure out what was wrong, because I didn't think it was me. I didn't feel like I was doing anything wrong. Like, I read all the dating books, I'd done all the things, I was attracting men, and the guys I was attracting, they're decent guys, like decent, genuine, good guys. So something wasn't going right though. A lot of things were going right, but then still, I was still single. So what the heck is going on? Okay, so I wrote why I picked the men I pick. And I listed all the men I liked and wanted a relationship with in the last 18 months who just disappeared. And I wrote down everything they had in common, all the things they had in common, okay? And then I had a good assessment of like the common traits, like what I, obviously me being the commonality here, and really having a hard look at looking at me and my circumstances from the male's perspective, okay? And here's what I discovered. This is a really interesting exercise, and I highly recommend you do it. So I discovered that out of those pool of men, the number one thing they had in common, apart from their great personalities and traits, was they all were only in the same location as I was for a limited period of time. So the shortest amount of time that man was in the same location as me was 3 days. And the longest time was 3 months. That was the longest. So literally all of these guys that I happened to keep falling for just happened to only be in the same location as me for the shortest 3 days or the longest 3 months. Like, even though I was dating a lot and meeting people locally and on dating apps, for some reason, I didn't feel a connection with any of them. It just happened to be all the ones I felt connections with, just happened to be men that were traveling, and only either traveling or like nomads like me. Because, you know, here's the other thing, was I was a nomad. Like, I was traveling every 6 months. Like, I was moving every 6 months. And I didn't even notice that that was a problem. Like, I blocked it out of my mind that that could even be an issue. In my mind, I was just being attracted to who I was attracted to. I wasn't even thinking that had anything to do with where they lived or how long they were in a certain location for, you know, like, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking like any fairy tale romance story, it's when you meet a guy and you feel a strong connection, it must be it. Who cares about the rest? Who cares about the practicality of... So the second thing I found out was that I was also picking men based on that strong connection, and what often that meant was hormones. I just felt hormonal about these men, and basically I just wanted to jump into bed with them. Like, I was so attracted to them, physically attracted, that I couldn't stop thinking about them. Largely, I was more so thinking about just jumping them, basically. I wasn't really thinking about what a connection with them would have been like without the sex, okay, without the physical aspect. And I somehow, that I had blocked out too, because I was like, but I also had a strong connection with them. We genuinely had things to talk about. We had things in common, right? So those two things jumped out. And then I asked myself, if I was a man, so putting myself in the man's shoes, would I actually want to commit to me? Okay? And if I was really honest, I'd be like, no. Okay, really think about it. What man would want to pursue and invest and keep investing in a woman to commit to her who was traveling every 6 months, or had a history of traveling every 6 months, or was always talking about traveling and moving somewhere else, because I at that period in my life, I loved traveling. It was so fun. But I had to get serious. I had to get real with myself. No man would. And in fact, I wouldn't either. If a man told me he was traveling every 6 months for his job, I'd be like, and I wanted a relationship, genuinely wanted a relationship, I'd be like, I don't think so. Not if I had to pursue him and put effort and energy and time and money into trying to make it work when he's all over the place. So no wonder these guys weren't sticking around. Like, I wouldn't have. Like, I genuinely now wouldn't have. But at the time, I wasn't thinking about that. I was purely thinking about the strong connection that it just happened to be with all these guys who were travelers, right? So that was really, really important for me to see that. So here's how I figured out this process, right? I asked myself what worked, what was working, what wasn't working, and what I will do differently next time. Clearly there's always things that are working. Right? I found out there were definitely things working. I knew how to attract men. I knew how to pick a man that I like the look of physically and do things to make him pursue me, to chase me. And they would chase me in the beginning, initially. So that was good. That process was fine. I didn't have to touch that. Okay? And I also knew I was great as a girlfriend. Okay? Every relationship I've ever had, all my boyfriends, were very super loyal, trusted me completely. I know I'm very loyal, I'm very trustworthy. They all trusted me. I trusted them. I know I'm very good as a girlfriend. And no one has ever really left me all of a sudden or anything like that, or showed like I know how to work through problems, basically. So I didn't feel it wasn't that. So my issue was how to bridge it, how to pick men who would also want to be in a relationship with me. And that's kind of how I did it, how I broke it down. And it's important that when I did this exercise, I didn't spiral into a big shame story over like, oh, it's because I'm such a loser, no one wants to be with me, I must be unworthy of love, it must be all of that stuff. I didn't go there, because when you just start spinning in your own like guilt and shame and feeling of unworthiness and telling yourself you suck and it must be I'm flawed and I'm broken, if you cannot like move that stuff aside, you can't get to the real reason, the real truth of why you're not in a relationship. So I had to look at my situation extremely objectively, like as if it's like I'm looking at data, factual data here, and not having all my emotions wrapped up in it, just so I can see the evidence clearly why it wasn't happening. Because a lot of these men, I felt like, hang on, they're losing interest in me, but they didn't even know me. They didn't even spend time to get to know me. Like, how can they be just turned off already? Like, I hadn't even done anything wrong. That is what I knew. I didn't do anything wrong, and they were disappearing. So me just being very like honest with myself of what I was doing right, and what wasn't working, made me come up with those two things. And from those two things, I knew then what to tweak, what to do differently next time. So moving forward, I knew I just had to tweak two things. First, I decided I was going to stay in one place, no longer going to travel and move around. And in fact, I wanted to settle down anyway, so this was good. Now, I will admit, I did have initial resistance to this because I wanted to move, actually. I didn't want to stay where I was, but I told myself, no, I'm going to commit to this. I want to get into a relationship. I want to settle. This is what I want. I'm going to commit to this one location. I'm not going to move. And I would tell men this. When I was initially dating, I said, yeah, I'm happy where I am. I'm not going anywhere. I do love to travel though, so maybe in the future it'd be great to travel together, but right now I'm happy being here. So this was important. So I created this safety for men, made men feel safe to pursue me, knowing I wasn't going anywhere, I wasn't going to be traveling and jumping all over the place, God knows where I was going to be, right? So they felt safe to put in the time, to put in the investment, okay? And number two, I had to get this hormonal piece, out of the way. The hormones was messing me up majorly, because I would just pick these guys based on physical attraction, how much I wanted to jump them, then not allowing enough time to build where I could actually see, do we have a real connection, friendship connection? So how I did that was I figured out that what I was really wanting from that initial, from the connection piece, was that high, the spike in adrenaline and the endorphins, the happy drugs, when a man would message me that I was attracted to. So what I did was I found something else in my life that would give me a similar high, give me that spike in adrenaline and endorphins. So I started to push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit. So I started doing more public speaking. I started, talking to more people, being more vulnerable, scary things that also spiked my adrenaline, right? And then when I overcame that, I would feel really good about myself. So I give myself that similar high that I was getting from men, but then I would just give that to myself now without relying on men. So I got that piece out of the way. I also told myself I was going to just give myself permission to just have casual sex if I felt like it. So prior to this decision, I had stopped having any casual sex because, like a lot of women do, we decide that I'm not going to have sex with a man unless we're in a relationship. That only works if you get into a relationship, but it had been over a year since I was in a relationship. It's a long time, actually, a very long time. So I hadn't had sex in a long time. So my body was craving it, right? So I just told myself, screw it. If I'm feeling it, if I'm feeling horny and hormonal and I want that rush, sex rush, just do it, right? Get it out of the system so I can focus on what I really want, which is building a genuine connection with men, okay? And that was the only two things I tweaked, because I knew the rest was working fine. I didn't have to tweak that, change that at all. And then I think less than 2 months, could have been 1 month, 1 to 2 months, I met my husband, okay? And I put my 2 tweaks into place, and the rest is history, right? It worked. It was as simple as that. I just had to do those 2 little tweaks by looking at what was working, what wasn't working, and what I had to do differently. And here's that amazing thing, and kind of a weird thing. When we met, we were actually long distance when we met. So kind of funny, but because circumstantially we were long distance, I didn't have to worry about the hormonal thing at all, right? Because that was taken care of by itself. He wasn't physically there for the hormones, for my own hormones to distract me. So naturally we could develop a friendship. And the second thing was, the distance, I still had I was still attracted to men with the distance, but I knew the distance was going to close because I was traveling back to my home country and I was going to stay there. So we both knew there wasn't going to be any distance in the future. So even though it started off long distance, it was only for that initial period. And then we both knew after that we would have the opportunity to see each other locally, and so he felt safe. I believe he felt safe to invest in me because he knew I was coming back home to him. And it worked. And it worked just by making those little tweaks. So I tell this story to really, I encourage you to do this exercise for yourself. If you're just completely baffled by why it's not working out for you so far. If you're single, you've tried everything and you're still single, I highly, highly recommend you do this exercise to really see just a couple of things you need to tweak. But be careful that you don't spiral into oh, it's just me, I'm just unworthy of love, you know, there's something wrong with me, men just hate me, blah, 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 right? Though thinking those thoughts and just beating yourself up and feeling crap about yourself doesn't do you any good, okay? You're going to block yourself from the truth of what you're doing. Here's the other thing I want to say just to finish off this video. Notice like when I did that exercise, on the top of the page, I put why I pick the men I pick. The wording there is important. I didn't say how I attracted men. It's how I pick the men I pick. Because here's the truth. Every single one of you, every single one of us actually pick the guy who starts chasing us, starts pursuing us, whether we know it or not. So you have a certain picking process right now, and that is either serving you or it's not serving you. So when I was picking all of those men, my picking process had to be strong connection hormones, and they had subconsciously, they had to live far away, and we could only spend like a couple of months together. That was my picking process. Okay, it was clearly flawed. It was not a good picking process, because, you know, the chances of that relationship working out was so low, right? So I want you to really look at how you're picking men, factually. How are you picking them? Okay, what criteria needs to be in place for you to fall for a man? And if you really broke that process down to like the details, right? Really dig deep into the details, not just, oh, we just met at a party. No. You know, some women don't even know how they attract men. Like the men just start talking to them. Here's the thing, men don't just start talking to you. You don't just suddenly fall into a relationship. You don't just suddenly fall in love with someone. There is a decision-making process that happens in your brain that tells you, you know, this is in place. That means I'm gonna pick him. I'm choosing him to spend time with. I'm choosing him to fall in love with. Okay, there is a process there. And you got to know what your process is and tweak that, because chances are, if you're not even being able to get into a relationship, or you're getting into relationships that are like unsatisfactory, then you need to look at how you're picking men. Okay, so that's my video for today. I hope that has been useful. I wanted to share that story because I think it is something most women don't do, and most of us don't do this, or certainly don't do it well, especially if we're crowded by our own judgment, by our own emotions, I mean to say. So do this exercise, very insightful, enlightening, so you can tweak your process and really get to that relationship so much faster. Okay, that's all from me. I'll talk to you real soon.